Hey everybody, I am here with our next lesson. Ruth was requested for me to go over, and it's such a short book that I thought I would just give you an overview of the book rather than doing one chapter really in depth. So get out your journaling Bible, get out a piece of paper, and if you have your timelines, I'm going to be referencing your cheat sheets to the book of the Bible for Ruth. We'll also be referencing Judges, because this is the time period that the story of Ruth was happening. So grab your supplies and let's get started. Okay, so Ruth, actually, I'm really excited. I can't believe I haven't outlined this for you yet, but I'm really excited that this topic was submitted because I'm currently working on a new product called Women in the Bible. And so it's going to be very similar to this format, except instead of giving you notes on a book of the Bible, it's going to be giving you notes on women of the Bible. And I'm not just going to hit, the popular 7 or 8 women of the Bible. I'm going to be trying to address all the women of the Bible and give every woman that has a name, really call them out, including naming the other women that are unnamed, the concubines, all those other women that are throughout the Bible. There are hundreds of women in the Bible, and a lot of times we can only think of, Eve, Ruth, Esther, Mary, and that's it. We also think of them as not having very big roles in the Bible. There are always really submissive women or quiet women. They're never in leadership roles. We don't really talk about women that a lot of times they're just very, very mellow women that we kind of think of. And even Mary, she has a very bold faith, but she's not vocally bold and a leadership role and things like that. And so I just want to give you a more well-rounded overview of the women in the Bible. And there's great qualities in all of these women, the small and the famous ones. So we've got people like Rahab, we have people like Deborah, we also have people like, I'm not sure how to say her name, Jael, who who killed the main people that were the leader of the people that were oppressing them. And then you've even got words like prophetess all throughout the Bible. And we don't really talk about that much, how women could be prophets and they were in the Bible, or that there might have even been women disciples in the Bible. So I want us to actually, instead of looking at a sermon or looking at a trendy celebrity author, that we are actually opening the book, the words of the Bible, and reading what we're seeing and learning all those things. So that's why I thought I needed a Women in the Bible resource for you to see there's more than just the 4 main women of the Bible, that there's all kinds of women throughout the Bible. And I hope that you are excited as I am to see this new study in the fall that's going to be released. So today we're going to talk about Ruth. So flip over there to Ruth 1. It's only 4 chapters, so I'm going to give you a quick overview of what the book of Ruth is about. So let's go ahead and read a little bit. I'm not going to read word for word, but I will read some of the main parts. So let's start taking some notes. Naomi loses her husband and sons. So right now we already know some characters. So let's start making a list of characters and how they're related. So first we've got Ruth, we've got Naomi, we've got her husband, and she has sons. So Naomi's married to a husband. We don't have a name for him. And they have 2 sons. So now we're going to figure out who is Ruth and why is she related to Naomi. In the days when the judges ruled, so this also takes place in the time of, or during time of Judges. There was a famine in the land. So a man from Bethlehem in Judah, together with his wife and 2 sons, so that's the husband, but he doesn't have a name. He's a man from Bethlehem. Together with his wife and 2 sons, went to live for a while in the country of Moab. So they're in Moab. The man's name was, oh, here we go. The man's name was Elimelech. So I could change his name to Elimelech. And his wife's name was Naomi. And the names of his 2 sons were Mahlon. See, I'm over here getting ahead of myself. Mahlon and Chilion. Ooh. They were Ephrathites from Bethlehem, Judah, and they went to Moab and lived there. So let's go over this word real quick. Ephrathites is a really weird word you might just skip over, but what I want you to notice is back in the book of Genesis, you had Jacob, who was renamed Israel, and his 12 sons were named, or were responsible for the 12 tribes of Israel. And one of his sons was Joseph, and Joseph had 2 sons, one of them named Ephraim. So he actually, I've got into this in another one, but he did have 12 sons, but 2 of his sons, Levi and Joseph, you won't see their allotment on the map. The Levites came from Levi, and they were the priests that lived among all the tribes. So Levites lived everywhere. They didn't have an assigned land, so they didn't count as one of the tribes. And Joseph didn't count as one of the tribes either. You won't see his name because Joseph was given 2 land allotments for each of his sons. So actually the other 10 sons got allotment, and then Jacob's grandsons got the other 2. So basically what I wanted to show you was Ephraim was Joseph's son. He had a section of land right here. This was Ephraim's land. And if you lived there, apparently you were called an Ephrathite. So that's where that comes from. They went to Moab and lived there. So there was oppression from the Moabites during the time of the Judges. There was oppression from all their enemies at one point or another. If you look in my Judges section, I can show you real quick. Judges was kind of a cycle of oppression and repentance and leadership and delivery from all of these nations that were oppressing them. So you've been oppressed by all of these nations during the time of Judges, and one of them were the Moabites. So the Moabites weren't Israelites, but they were their enemy. And so the reason they're leaving Bethlehem and going to Moab is because there's a famine right here, it says. So they're leaving because of the famine, but they are Israelites going to Moab. And then they just keep that in mind. So we're in verse 3. It says, now Elimelech, Naomi's husband, died, and she was left with her other 2 sons. So I'm going to draw a little quick tombstone right there because he dies. And Naomi's husband dies. She was left with her 2 sons. They married Moabite women. So I'm going to say a Moab woman. And this one was named Orpah, and this one was named Ruth. So these were not Israelites, Ruth and Orpah. They were Moabites that this family married into. Okay, so one was named Orpah, the other was named Ruth, and they lived there about 10 years. And both Mahlon and Chilion also died, and Naomi was left without her 2 sons and her husband. So there's a lot of information right here. The sons both died. And the husband. So there's no men left in this family. There's Naomi, Ruth, and Orpah. So the next section says, Naomi and Ruth returned to Bethlehem. So I'm going to give you the short version of this besides reading every paragraph. So Naomi wants to go back to Bethlehem. She's from Bethlehem. She's an Israelite. Ruth and Orpah are not. So let's jot that down. Israelite. Ruth and Orpah are Moabites. And now you know why they're called Israelites, was because that promised land that I showed you with all the tribes, that was the 12 tribes of Israel, who was originally named Jacob. So Jacob got renamed to Israel. So anybody who lived in one of those 12 tribes was an Israelite. So there you go. Okay, so basically Naomi says she wants to return. And Ruth and Orpah have to decide, are they going to go with her or are they going to stay? And Orpah stays and Ruth goes with Naomi. And this is where she says the thing we have on mugs and all kinds of stuff. You always hear like the famous verse from Ruth is in verse 11. Naomi says, return home, my daughters. Why would you come with me? And am I going to have any more sons who would become your husbands? Return home, my daughters. I'm too old to have another husband. Even if I thought there was still hope for me, even if I had a husband tonight and he gave birth to sons, would you wait till they grew up? Would you remain unmarried for them? No, my daughters, it's more bitter for me than for you because the Lord's hand has turned against me. So Naomi's obviously really depressed and she's like, you're better off without me, because back in that day, if you didn't have a man, you were, you couldn't own property, you didn't own anything. And so it was basically a death sentence, or you were homeless, or you had to become a prostitute or things like that. So she's just saying, don't get mixed up in me and what I'm doing, because you're going to have problems just like I'm going to have problems. Stay here and maybe someone will marry you. So Orpah says, okay, goodbye. And Ruth actually says, don't urge me to leave you or turn back from you. Where you go, I will go, and where you stay, I will stay. Your people will be my people, and your God, my God. Where you die, I will die, and there I will be buried. May the Lord deal with me, be it ever so severely, even if death separates you and me. When Naomi realized that Ruth was determined to go with her, she stopped urging her. So here's the quote that everybody talks about. So we're just going to write it on the side. Let's see. Where you go, I will go. Where you stay, I will stay. Your people will be my people. And your God, my God. And that is Ruth chapter 1, verse 16. So this is interesting because Ruth has grown up in Moab, where they have not worshipped the God that the Israelites worship. And obviously something has happened where Ruth loves her mother-in-law. She's seen something good in her. She wants to follow her. She wants to take on her religion. So this actually speaks to, evangelizing, showing love, showing commitment to each other and community. There's a lot that is shown in their relationship, just in how she approaches this this conversation of Naomi telling her to leave. So the reason I did like this, because I just want you to notice the similarities in the sentence. I always like to notice the little patterns in the sentence. Where you go, I will go. Where you stay, I will stay. Your people will be my people, and your God, my God. So it's like a little poem. Okay, so let's keep going. Okay, so now they're living in, well, she goes to Bethlehem, I believe. Yes, returns to Bethlehem. Life in Bethlehem. So now we're at Life in Bethlehem, and Ruth meets Boaz. So we have a new character. There's Ruth, there's Naomi, and now there's Boaz. We know who Ruth is. We know who Naomi are. Who's Boaz? Naomi had a relative on her husband's side, a man of standing from the clan of Elimelech, whose name was Boaz. Okay, so Boaz is Naomi's relative of Naomi's husband. And his name was Elimelech. Oh, his clan. I don't know the name of his clan, but Elimelech was in that clan, and so that's how they're related. Ruth said, the Moabite said to Naomi, let me go to the fields and pick up the leftover grain behind anyone in whose eyes I find favor. Naomi said to her, go ahead, my daughter. And so she went and was working into the field that belongs to Boaz. He owns a field where Ruth, I believe it's called gleaning. I need to look that up. I should have looked it up. But there's a term for what she's doing. There's a rule in Leviticus or something like that where God says anything that when you're harvesting the field, if anything falls down on the ground, you're not to pick it up, like the leftovers. You're not to pick that up. You're supposed to leave that for people in need. So Ruth is in need, and she's following them around, going and picking up. Yes, right here, glean. I knew that was a word, glean, where Ruth is gleaning. So she's taking the leftover, what is it, wheat? Where did the harvester? They're harvesting something. Harvest leftover produce. I don't know. I don't want to say wheat if it's not wheat. I'm sure it is. Okay, so she is taking this from Boaz, and then Boaz is telling her that he asked, who does that one young woman belong to in verse 5? The overseer replies, she's the Moabite who came back from Moab with Naomi, and he should know Naomi because he's a relative of her husband. She said, please let me glean and gather among the sheaves behind the harvesters. She came into the field, has remained here from morning till now, except for a short rest in the shelter. And so he is telling her, don't go into another field. Don't go away from here. I'll always make sure that you have something to glean, that you have food. He also realizes that she's using this food to feed her and Naomi, so she's taking care of someone. So he notices her, so I bet she's attractive. And then he notices what she's doing after they find out about her being with Naomi. So he knows what she looks like. He's attracted to her, and he knows her character. So now he's attracted to that as well. So basically what happens is Ruth finds favor with this man named Boaz. And Boaz is actually called a kinsman redeemer. Boaz is their kinsman redeemer. And I have this information in my notes already, in my cheat sheets. But a kinsman redeemer is a male relative who has had responsibility to act for a woman who is in trouble. So they don't have to marry. It's like when the brother dies, the brother would marry the wife. Well, he's not the brother, he's a distant relative. But he's called a kinsman redeemer, which means he still has responsibility to take care of these widows in his family. So he's doing that. And eventually they have over here, Ruth and Boaz at the threshing floor is chapter 3. So Naomi says, I want you to find a place where you'll be provided for. And she wants Naomi wants Ruth to be with Boaz because they know he's a good man. They know he'll take care of them, but she would like them to be together so that she doesn't have to worry about Ruth, and Ruth doesn't have to take care of her. So Naomi says, my daughter, in verse 1 of chapter 3, my daughter, I must find a home for you where you'll be well paid for. Now Boaz, whose women who you have worked, is a relative of ours. Tonight he'll be winnowing barley on the threshing floor. There we go, barley. That's what they're doing. The produce is barley. I figured it out. Wash, put on perfume, and get dressed in your best clothes. Then go down to the threshing floor, but don't let him know you're there until he's finished eating and drinking. And when he lies down, note the place where he's lying, and then go and uncover his feet and lie down. He will tell you what to do. And she says, I'll do whatever you say. So she goes and does that, and he says in verse 9, who are you? He asked. She says, I am your servant Ruth. Spread the corner of your garment over me, since you're guardian redeemer of our family. So down here, guardian redeemer has a little footnote. I've learned it as kinsman redeemer. So I'm going to put a note over here. It's also guardian redeemer. So I put AKA guardian redeemer. And then there's a little note down here. It says, and you should have in your Bible too. Most Bibles, even if they don't have like reference materials in the back, will have footnotes. So where was that? Guardian Redeemer was chapter 3, verse 9, and it had a little footnote. So I'm going to go look down at D right here. It says, the Hebrew word for guardian redeemer is a legal term for one who has the obligation to redeem a relative in serious difficulty. I told you it was in Leviticus. Yes, I'm killing it. Okay, so Leviticus 25 through 55 is where that they tell you the rule for the guardian redeemer. So, alrighty. Fun fact. Okay, so verse 10, the Lord bless you, my daughter, he replied. This kindness is greater than what you showed me earlier. You have not run after younger men, whether rich or poor. And now, my daughter, don't be afraid. I will do for you all you ask. All the people of my town know you're a woman of noble character. Although it is true I'm a guardian redeemer of our family, there is another more closely related than I. Stay here for the night. In the morning, if he wants to do his duty as your guardian redeemer, good, let him redeem you. But if he's not willing, as surely as the Lord lives, I will do it. Lay here until this morning. So basically he says, I want to do it right legally. There's somebody else who has say before I do, one of the relatives. But thank you for, he's actually telling her that he's honored that she would choose him because she's young and he's old. I'm not sure how old, but basically what happens is they choose each other in a beautiful little love story. In chapter 4, Boaz marries Ruth. And so she asks him, or it works out that he becomes the guardian redeemer. And so they are actually married. So long story short, let's skip over to verse 11 and wrap this up because I want to point out some things. Then the elders and all the people at the gate said, we are witnesses. May the Lord make the woman who's coming into your home like Rachel and Leah, who together built up the family of Israel. Remember Rachel and Leah, Jacob, the guy who got renamed Israel, right? Now I'm questioning myself. It was Jacob, not Isaac. Isaac married Rebekah. Yes, okay. Isaac married Rebekah. That's Abraham had Isaac. And then Isaac had Jacob. And Jacob married Rachel and Leah. Remember that sad story of he didn't love Leah, but she was the older sister. So his uncle made him marry him because they were cousins or something weird in old Bible times. So anyways, he marries Rachel and Leah. And what it's saying here is they're blessing Ruth to raise up, because this was the lineage of Christ. They were reproducing it to continue God's lineage, and they're blessing Ruth and Boaz to continue on that lineage. And what ends up happening is Ruth and Boaz have, and I've got it here just so you could see it, looking a little prettier. Down here we have Ruth marries Boaz, and they have Obed, who has Jesse, who is the father of David. And then if you look at the lineage, which actually this should be ancestor, so if you've got this, you can change it. They fall in love, they're married, and their child is an ancestor of Jesus, because Ruth's family lineage leads into Jesus's family lineage. And obviously, Jesus didn't come from David's flesh, but he was part of Mary's, and Mary is along that line as well. So I have released genealogies of the Bible from Adam all the way to Jesus, and how all those genealogies all over the Bible connect. And so I've got these scattered throughout my cheat sheets, but if you just want the overall, how does Adam connect to Jesus, and who's in that line or in that lineage, such as Ruth and David. They've also got Rahab is in there, that prostitute from the book of Joshua. So I've got all those lined out or outlined for you in the genealogy printable. So that's a good one it's just 3 pages and you tape it together. I've got it hanging on my wall and I reference it all the time. But right here, I wanted to show you a little bit of that genealogy that is included in that. It says the family line of Perez, which Perez is one of the people on that list of people in the lineage of Christ. Perez was the father of Hezron, who's the father of Ram, who's the father of Amminadab, who's the father of Nahshon, who's the father of Salmon, who's the father of Boaz, Obed, Jesse, and David. And that's where we go. All right, here we've got Boaz. Had Obed. So that's the proof right there that those are the people who are in it. Okay, so there's so much to the book of Ruth. I hate to go through it super fast. Even finding out who these people are, like Tamar, you're going to want to dig into this girl's story. That's back in Genesis. That is a crazy story. But all of these stories I'm really excited about. Rachel, Leah, Tamar, Ruth. I am digging into these stories because of the women in the Bible thing that I'm creating. And each one of these women are going to get a page of details of their life and their role in the Bible and lessons we can learn from them. And I get really excited about Bible study because I just see connections everywhere the more that I study it. And so I hope that this encourages you to look for your own connections. Use those footnotes at the bottom. Use my cheat sheets. You can use Bible dictionaries, all kinds of resources, but make sure that the number one resource you're using is your Bible. Thank you so much for submitting this topic, Jennifer. And I will outline another topic that you guys submit next Friday. So I'll see you back here at 12 o'clock next Friday, that Central Time, because I am a Texan. So thank you guys so much. Have a great weekend, and I'll see you next week.